Third-party developed Sonic titles that get mixed reviews and split the fanbase down the middle are something you just have to get used to as a Sonic fan. Sonic 3D's no exception to this rule. The question is, are either side's arguments stronger than the other? There are 3 versions I'm going to be looking at today: the Mega Drive original, the Saturn version, and the PC release. The Mega Drive version is the one most people are familiar with, and the release is included in compilations for modern platforms. It's technically impressive for the system it's on, even featuring an FMV-like opening and some pseudo-3D special stages that provided a convincing illusion for their time. Sonic 3D came to Saturn shortly after with actual FMVs, significantly improved visuals, an entirely different soundtrack by Richard Sharks, and fully 3D special stages. Finally, we have the PC version, which is a pared-back port of the Saturn game. It's missing a few features, such as this fog effect in Rusty Ruin, and its special stages are once again entirely different, but for the most part, it's comparable to the Saturn version. As for which version is the best, well, that's a very tricky question to answer, but I'll aim to help you form a preference as we explore the game itself. Despite its name, the game's not actually in 3D. Instead, we have a top-down isometric view with pre-rendered sprites. There are graphics and behaviours to mimic slopes, inclines, and varying elevations, but in reality, the game takes place on an entirely 2D plane. You can move Sonic in 8 directions, and I must admit, I found the movement speed to be much faster, and the controls a little sloppier than I remembered when booting up the Mega Drive game. Growing up, I played the title on a PAL 50Hz console, but the modern Steam release uses the NTSC 60Hz American version. Typically speaking, European games are around 18% slower than their American counterparts thanks to differing TV standards at the time, which would explain my surprise at Sonic's velocity and relative inaccuracy. Traveller's Tales are a British company, and the game was developed in the UK, so I have to wonder if their intentions might be more accurately represented by a slower 50Hz version. The camera keeps Sonic in the centre of the frame, so it's hard to see upcoming obstacles and enemies. Combined with the twitchier controls, I found myself cautiously nudging Sonic around the stage, tapping the directions rather than holding them. People claim this ruins the game and makes high-speed platforming impossible, but I don't think this is that kind of game. There are very few instances of mandatory platforming challenges, and the bulk of them are fairly simple. A lot of people call out this jump in Rusty Ruins, but it never causes me any issues. I actually find this mandatory triple jump across falling platforms near the end of the same zone to be much harder. 9 times out of 10, all you need to do is be patient, think ahead, and line your jump up. I personally find the core pillar to be exploration rather than jumping around. The stages all have open-ended designs that wrap around on themselves. Your goal is to find 5 flicky birds in each section of a level and escort them to a goal ring. With the exception of the last stage, you're not faced with a linear gauntlet. Suddenly, nudging the directional inputs and taking your time makes a lot more sense. I fully get that's not what the franchise is about, and the gameplay on offer here isn't what most people would associate with a Sonic game. I think those reasonable and justifiable expectations versus the reality causes a whiplash and disappointment that exaggerates people's problems with the game. I realise saying a Sonic game gets better if you stop thinking about it as a Sonic game is a bit of a cop-out, and it doesn't excuse the developers or publishers. After all, they're the ones who set themselves up for that fall. I'll also admit that attacking enemies, something you have to regularly do in order to free flickies and progress, is incredibly fiddly, and I certainly took more than my fair share of cheap hits. There are also genuine problems with the escort mission formula here. If you get hit, any flickies you have with you scatter. Fair enough, but each variety of flicky has their own movement patterns, some running away from you, and it's very easy to get caught in a loop of repeatedly being hit when you're trying to gather the birds back up. What's less fair is flickies follow behind you and have their own hitboxes. That means you can dodge an attack or hazard, but the flickies can still get hit and scatter themselves. In this instance, I didn't even realise I'd lost my flicky. There's no indicator on where the flickies have gone, so if you carry on before realising you've only got 4 of your 5 feathery babies with you, you're going to be scouring the entire stage again to find them. The worst instance of this was Diamond Dust Zone. I went back to an earlier part of the stage for a shortcut so I could attempt a special stage. More on those in just a moment. After getting my emerald, the shortcut was closed, and I had to take the long way back. Annoying, but whatever. Problem is, that route has a hazard that freezes you and sends you down a one-way drop, causing the flickies to scatter at the same time. I had to loop the entire stage to come back for them, and when I did, they were gone. My best option at that point was to take a death and restart from a checkpoint. As for the emeralds, this time you have to find Tails or Knuckles in a hidden part of the stage. Normally you'll have to knock down a wall or go off the beaten path for a bit, emphasizing that core pillar of exploration and rewarding your participation. Sometimes they're just lazily placed in the middle of a normal route, and in one case they're just stood right next to each other. Once you find them, you have to give them 50 rings for them to take you to a special stage. Yes, Robotnik's threatening the world, and Sonic's friends are trying to shake him down if he wants their help. The best part is, if you've got more than 50 rings, they'll just take everything you have on you. Imagine getting a taxi ride that should be a tenner, but the driver just takes your whole wallet instead. On the Mega Drive, you'll get an incredibly easy track full of rings. You can see way off into the distance, it doesn't move all that fast, and you're pretty much guaranteed to win. It's impressive they were able to get the Mega Drive to do this, but that's the only nice thing I can really say about these stages. The Saturn is much flashier, it's proper 3D, you see the character fly you in. Sonic has a fun little animation when you pass a checkpoint, and you get these cool banks and turns for variety. Problem is, you just can't see what's up ahead, meaning you have to rely on either memorization or guesswork to pass. The PC gives us a sort of halfway house. You've got a 3D tube with 2D sprites. It moves incredibly quickly, you can't see or react to what's coming, but there are so many rings available, it's almost impossible to fail. Saturn would win this category if it was based solely on style and flair, but would lose in terms of practicality and a fair challenge. There's another key difference here. In the Mega Drive release, you can get 2 emeralds per stage by finding Knuckles and Tails respectively, but in the Saturn and PC editions, you can only get 1 gem per level. Sonic's other friend will still happily take his rings and transport him to a special stage, but you'll be playing for an extra life rather than that sweet Chaos Emerald. They kind of make seeking both of them out a bit pointless in those versions. You may as well just go with whoever you come across first. Getting the emeralds won't give you Super Sonic, but does grant access to the final boss and true ending. In the Mega Drive version, you actually get a little transitional scene before the final showdown that's absent in the other releases. There are other story sequences that are unique to the Mega Drive version too, and I'm not sure why they were omitted from its cousins. Most of the bosses here are rather simple and easy to take down. Some can even be flat out abused and brute forced. If you struggle with the isometric view and judging depth perception in this game, you're probably going to have a much harder time defeating these. While there are shadows to help you approximate, it can be guesswork as to whether your hits are going to land, especially when attacking the side panels of the penultimate boss. Once you've adjusted though, the level of challenge really does become trivial. On balance, the hit-and-miss core concept wasn't Traveler's Tales' design, but rather something Sonic Team provided. Sega of Japan are all over the credits for game design, sound design, and graphics. I'm actually really impressed with how TT Games were able to execute on what they were given. That's not to say Sega of Japan gave Traveler's Tales a raw deal though. Jun Senoue worked on the Mega Drive soundtrack, and several of the tunes returned in later mainline Sonic games, becoming fan favourites. While Richard Jacques did an admirable job on the Saturn and PC soundtrack, which in terms of objective quality, bitrate, number of channels, accuracy of instruments, complexity of composition, that sort of thing, is technically superior, I forgot almost all of the tracks when I turned the game off. The Mega Drive soundtrack had stronger core melodies I still find myself humming now, and that became my favourite version of the OSTs as a result. It's a great example of how limitations can spur creativity and produce better content. The same can't be said for the graphics. On Saturn and PC, we have more colours to play with and more visual information's provided. The Mega Drive has boring, flat, tiled floors with no texture compared to its beefier brothers, where we get far more detail. We see weather effects, creaky floor tiles, native animals, and loads of little touches that really elevate the presentation far beyond anything the Mega Drive could do. Although the Saturn version came out a few weeks later, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the lead platform. Japan never got a Mega Drive release, only the Saturn version came out there. The graphics for the Mega Drive look like they took the Saturn assets and reduced the colour palette. It would be much easier to downgrade the higher fidelity visuals of the Saturn than it would be to upgrade the lower quality ones from the Mega Drive. The shapes and forms are such an exact match that I wouldn't be surprised if they'd automated the process for a quick and easy conversion. Overall, I prefer the PC's visuals as the best of both worlds. It loses some of the Saturn's overlays, but there were instances where those fogs obscured my view of and hindered the gameplay. In an interactive medium, function has to be prioritised over form, and the Saturn version makes the on-screen action harder to read, so it feels a little unbalanced in that regard. See, this is why it's really hard to recommend one particular version of the game. The Mega Drive is the cheapest and easiest to obtain and play, with the fewest barriers to entry, but graphically it's lacking. The Saturn version is gorgeous, and those special stages were absolute wish fulfillment, but good luck finding a copy at a reasonable price, and hooking a somehow still working Saturn up to your modern TV. The PC version represents a great middle ground, but is only available second-hand, and requires a fan-made utility, Sega Reloaded, to get it running on Windows 10. Worth mentioning is Sonic 3D Director's Cut. Lead programmer and co-founder of Traveller's Tales, John Burton, released a ROM hack of Sonic 3D that updates the Flicky's HUD, adds Supersonic, improves the camera, and otherwise addresses a ton of the most common complaints people have with this game. It's on the Steam Workshop for anyone who owns that release. This is a Marmite game and a Sonic title in name only. If you're curious as to whether it's your kind of thing, check out the Steam release of the Mega Drive original, and then if you like what you play, seek out the PC version for a slightly better experience. That's gonna do it for this one. Personally, I like Sonic 3D, I go back to it fairly regularly and I do enjoy it, but I can fully appreciate why others might not. Let me know which side of the fence you fall on in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff to see the new videos when they come out, and let me know if there's a particular game you'd like me to cover.